Hey, Paratopia, it's Jeff Ritzmann here. Jeremy is down with a tornado. And I'm here with Lee Townsend, who was my first research partner many years ago. And I know that I've mentioned him a lot on the show. And so I asked Lee when we reconnected, a couple of months ago?
It was several months ago, yeah.
If he wanted to do this and come on the show. And I wanted to have Jeremy here for this, but due to the tornado ripping through Queens Thursday morning, early Friday, I think it was, or late Friday. At any rate, he's out of commission, and so Lee was scheduled to do this, and rather than disappoint, we decided to go ahead and do it anyway. So anyway, thanks for coming on, Lee.
Jeff, thanks so much. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be able to make the scene here. I do regret not being able to hook up with Jeremy on this, but
we'll have you back on.
Lovely.
We'll have you back on because I don't think we're going to be able to cover everything in an hour and a half.
No, we can. We can go through some stuff. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I wanted to tell people how we met because that's I know Jeremy would ask how did you ever meet Jeff? And I think we're safe in saying that I used to own a graphics shop some years ago, and in the course of doing graphic work, I ended up doing some T-shirts for some national bands, and one of the guys that I met was a guy named Don who owned a shop where I did some of this work.
Right. Don and I were roommates.
Exactly.
At the time, sure.
And so I went in to Don's one day to talk about doing some shirts. Mm-hmm. And we had done a lot of work together, and he got to know me pretty well. And he's like, dude, what's the matter with you? And I was like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. He's like, you look a little stressed out. I said, dude, can I confide in you? And he's like, yeah. And so I told him what had happened recently, which was, and everybody in the audience will know the story when I say about me and my wife, the truck, and the red lit disc that we saw north of here. And what ensued from that. So I laid that story out for Don. I said, I know you think I'm crazy. And Don says, no.
No, I don't.
Because I've had that kind of scenario.
Right.
And he told me his scenario. And he says, I know somebody that would love to talk to you. And that was Lee. And so I called Lee and we started talking, and everything kind of rolled on from there, I think. I mean, I had been into it for a while, you had been into it for a while, and then we kind of got together and ended up not only investigating each other's stuff, but also kind of facilitating the experiencer support group with Exler, Maccabee, and Phillips, I think his name was, doing some, I guess, rudimentary field stuff for Bruce at one point, up and around Fort Meade, and doing a lot of sky watching
a whole lot.
Up at that place.
And racking up some miles, too, because
we went to Pine Bush together.
Several times.
And we've had Phil and Brogno on the show before, where I talked to him about what we saw there.
Right.
He said, not uncommon, which, by the way, the gold light around the mountain, the ball of smoke beside the road that I wouldn't stop for.
All the time.
The weird animal behind the...
weird animal. I had a zigzagging meteorite.
Yeah.
A meteor, rather. Not a meteorite, but a zigzagging meteor.
I mean, all of that, he said, not uncommon and totally typical for that area and where we saw it, which was at that convenience store on the corner. But anyway, we ended up doing all this. We got together and we actually, I don't think it was too long after that the support group thing came up, and we started going to that. I haven't talked a lot about that on the show.
And out of respect for those that are involved, I think we should keep that to a minimum.
Sure.
We can go over it.
Yeah, just touch here and there. But how did you get into this subject at all from the get-go?
Well, I mean, I'd always been interested in the phenomenon, as a kid growing up in the 60s, all the science fiction movies and things like that. So I always had a keen eye and ear toward it. And through the years, I'd always had, here and there, not on any regular basis, but some pretty odd, inexplicable events occur in my personal life. And I was at one point, it was right around 1988, I believe. I was, just happened to be downtown on a night off, and I was walking, just walking the streets, basically, looking for something to do. I came upon a bookstore that had a coffee shop in there. I was going to go in and grab a cup of coffee. And,
Right.
and as I'm walking through the bookstore, I see this book on the shelf, as many people have been really drawn to this phenomenon, or to this explanation of the phenomenon. I saw the Communion, Whitley Strieber's Communion, and I saw that creature
That
on
face.
that face. Oh, that face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really resonated with me at that point, and it struck me.
Mm-hmm.
Why, I don't know, how, I don't know, but I instantly picked the book up, forgot about the cup of coffee, took the book, went, bought it, paid for it, went home, and read it that night. And became engrossed with the phenomenon. I mean, I'd always peripherally been interested, like from sixth grade, we get the cool, like, science nerds in class would go to the library anytime a UFO book came out or something like that. We ingested as much of Project Blue Book as we could, at the time. So we knew that, so we believed that something was going on. So I'd always had a kind of a passing interest in it. But when it came down to personal experiences and seeing people who have had, of course, I followed the Barney and Betty Hill thing, the Exeter, case through Look magazine and all that.
A lot of stuff that was going on in that time.
There was a whole lot of activity at that time. But what fascinated me was the notion of contact.
Yeah.
So, and I think, like a lot of naive people that first get into it, I'm sitting there reading and I was like, wow, I've had a lot of this stuff happen to me. And I start, looking into it and start regressing, and you start cataloging. You go back in your mind and you start cataloging, well, this happened and that was weird. I had an incident occur when I was 8 years old. I had an incident occur that I'm aware of, an actual sighting incident that occurred in 1973 that was attendant with a period of missing time, and it just fascinated me at this point. Where
was that? Can you detail that?
That was sure. I can give the war stories about it.
Yeah.
And as much as I can remember.
Right.
This is the thing. I was working in Columbia, Maryland at the time. I was on my way home. It was actually, I believe the anniversary is today, 1973.
Really?
Yeah. This is the day.
Nice.
Right around that third week of September in 1973.
Okay.
I was driving home from work. I was coming up to Route 29. At that particular time, there was a traffic light intersection. And I'm driving up to the intersection, and I see a red light in the sky passing from right to left. I said, okay, this is cool, airplane, right?
Yeah, PWI.
Just kind of, right near the airport, right in the approach area and the holding area of the airport. So I figure it's an airplane traveling at a nice, leisurely, slow pace, and then all of a sudden, as it comes in roughly in front of my field of vision, thing speeds up to incredible speeds and splits into three separate lights. One light goes up and disappears. One light continues going over the horizon and goes away, and another light goes down. And I'm this is interesting. I'm going to go chase this one. I must have been out of my mind.
Right, yeah.
But I go to chase this one that went down, and I went back the road that leads to Howard High School at the time. It's a couple of roads up from my exit where I got onto the highway. And I made a right off of the highway, and I'm driving back, and I'm looking in the sky. It's all tree lined on either side of the road, so I don't have much sky view at that point. And I'm plugging along, not really noticing at the time. I'm the only guy on the road. I think it was a Tuesday night, about 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm driving along, and I come around the bend, and this is at a point where there's a high school there, Howard High School. I come around the bend to see Howard High School come into view. Directly behind Howard High School is a huge water tower.
Okay.
Okay, so I come around there and I look, and above the water tower, directly above the water tower, is a red light.
Mm-hmm.
No, not the red light that you see that's on top of every water tower,
right?
In the world. This thing was huge. It was it was one solid red light, about almost the size of the
tower
Okay. My next recollection is, holy crap! I hit the brakes. My next recollection. I say that very specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I turn the car around, go speeding to the nearest police department, which I believe was in Ellicott City at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Ellicott City Police Department. I said, have you had any reports of UFOs in the area? Guy looked at me like I had three heads. And
that
he said,
shit, yeah.
Right. And he said no. Little realizing at that point in time it was 10:30 at night.
Oh.
And I was recently sharing this story with another friend of mine, and I have two little flashes of memory, and one is at some point being in my car directly right next on the little access road directly next to the tower.
Okay.
And another one, which is really weird, of being in my car face to face with this little guy that I saw on the cover of Communion, or something like that.
Yeah, something similar.
I mean, literally face to face.
Right.
I mean, like an inch away face to face.
Well, they have a tendency to do that.
Come right over my right shoulder, and this is why, I've been discussing with several people lately. I've always had a pretty bad startle response, and I think it's attributable to that.
Oh, okay.
The fact, and particularly something coming around my right side, and it's really weird. I turn around and look, and there's this. Then I fall into something, and I don't know. So
yeah.
That's one really striking incident, and I have gone and seen some people who have done this regression therapy.
Right.
And
how did you find that?
One was through. What do you mean? How did I find it? How did I locate them?
How did you find the results?
Are you doing Dr. Phil on me now?
No, we hate regression on this show. I mean,
yeah, right. Well, and I've come to that point as well.
Yeah,
because it's and we'll get into that. It's really more about beliefs, and where your mind is at than maybe any kind of real objective reality that ever gets recovered. I can only tell you, and I can only share these experiences telling you that I don't know what the hell happened. I know something occurred. Right. And I'll say that as a precursor to any of these incidents that I'll share with you. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But I know that something happened. What happened? I don't know. Yeah. To this day, I don't know.
You sound like me.
Yeah, well, hey, I think it's a fairly common thread. And those who are involved in this phenomenon, in this type field, in any kind of paranormal thing, is the only real constancy is the extreme degree of strangeness with everything that's involved. Yeah. I've had several incidents. You and I have had numerous events. And I think when we get together, it's almost like when you put magnets together, that it increases the magnetic strength of something, and you attract more of the crap. But I had another incident that was really it occurred while we were. I think it was while we were working together. I was doing a job in Ocean City, Maryland, one evening, and had to make the long trek back home to another job in the morning back in the Baltimore area. Right. And it was probably about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving from Ocean City, and I usually take the back road route. You're familiar with that road, that trip from Ocean City to
you got like
somewhere.
You got a 3-hour drive basically to get back, and you can go over the Bay Bridge, which people who've listened to this show know my experience with the Bay Bridge and coming home, and ending up in the southern tip of Ohio. Right. But you can also go around country, which takes you up through Delaware. They call it the Delaware Route, or something like that.
Point, on that particular occasion, I was not going up around the Horn of Delaware, up through into the top northeastern section of Maryland. I was actually going to the Bay Bridge, but rather than take the well-blazed Route 50 route, the four-lane divided highway, I took the back roads.
Okay.
Trying to, make a little bit better time, that kind of thing. 2-lane highway, 404 is the road.
Okay.
And I'm actually coming up, it's a very clear night, driving along. I get to a point about a mile or two from the Maryland line on the Delaware side, and all of a sudden I'm engulfed in this huge fog bank. And I mean pea soup fog, where you can see nothing whatever. And I don't know if I ever even related this story to you, Jeff. And we talk about screen memories and that kind of thing, and clouded memories, no pun intended, with the fog bank.
Right.
I think it's quite frequently
metaphorical.
It's a little, maybe even a little more than metaphorical. So I enter this fog bank, and I'm like, well, I better slow down. So I really slow my car down to a crawl, because literally you cannot, visibility is maybe 30 feet in front of the car.
Jesus, okay.
It was a thick fog, about the thickest fog I've ever driven in. At least that's what it appeared to be.
Okay.
I'm driving along, and I'm just a few moments into this fog bank, and then I'm startled by a big bird that just appears out of nowhere in front of my car and flies up in front of my windshield, up and over my car. I see wingspans, I see a big, and the wingspan, of course I was driving a Chevy Geo at the time,
right.
So it wasn't that wide a car, but the wingspan took about, little 3-cylinder Suzuki motor in it.
Right.
This thing it just appeared, flew over my car. The wingspan was about the width of the car.
Wow.
It was a huge bird.
Right.
First thought, okay, it's a turkey.
Okay.
Logical.
For that area, yeah.
I continue on, hit the Maryland line. This is my recollection, conscious recollection. Hit the Maryland line to get about half mile over the Maryland line. Still in the fog bank, another bird flies up, but almost like a repeat. And then the fog is over, and I continue on my merry way. Didn't note the time, didn't notice any missing time. However, I have a recollection, a little thing sticking in my mind of seeing to the left, off the highway, maybe 200 feet, and there was a fall line of trees, and then like some kind of farmer's field or something like that. Probably a cornfield, because it was all down at that time. And I remember seeing like a row of lights, little lights. Okay, and I'm like, well, okay. Next time I go by that, I'll see if I can locate that. Well, next time I had occasion to go past there, it was clear. And I looked, and it was during the daytime, and it was exactly as I remembered it. And remember, I couldn't see 30 feet at that point in time.
Right.
I've even got it located on Google Maps. I know the exact spot. I can tell you.
And there's nothing there would have made lights.
No, it's a field.
Yeah.
It's a field. It's an open... It's the end of a cornfield right before a long tree line. And this is right next to the Maryland state line.
One of the things that I've talked about, I would say especially in conjunction with a lot of stuff that I've experienced when it comes to, and I think I relate it best when it comes to the Ohio thing, is the seamlessness of all of it.
Absolutely seamless. You
see that in the same way. It's not like, people have a hard time, I think, conceptualizing like how seamless it is, and then you try to explain, like, literally, I can remember a contiguous line of events.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there.
Right.
Except weirdness.
You can't detect the splice.
No.
Yeah.
But yet there's time that's not there anymore.
Yeah. Well, for that particular occasion, as I said, I don't think I really noticed any missing time because I wasn't thinking to notice it.
Right.
All I know is it's the middle of the night and I got to get home.
Yeah.
So that was a strange occurrence. And it all points to the fact that something is going on. Something is going on.
Yeah.
There again. And the only thing I can say is, I don't know what. I do have these little flashes, little snippets of memories that I may not supposed to be remembering or what. I don't know. I we start out, and I started this long tirade before with starting out, by saying when we start out in this field, we have this kind of naivete that this might be a situation of little doctors or scientists from another planet that are here to study us for some silly reason. But, when you look at it, really what that is us projecting our interpretation onto a certain phenomenon, onto a certain set of circumstances. So after you run into enough cases, as we got involved with this, we had, you get a little bit of notoriety and people start coming to you.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are many, many people that have had very strange, anomalous experiences that they like to ascribe some kind of meaning to in their lives.
Right.
It's a question that, okay, it's not going to break the deal in your life if you don't have an answer, but it would be nice to have some kind of answer to it. So these people who are involved will gravitate. They hear about somebody that is not going to immediately dismiss them as a kook, or a whack job or anything, and that will take the time to listen and validate their recounting, at least their take on the experience.
Well, because as the movie says, we're all space cadets. We have to make the best of it, right?
Well, and we have there are a lot of these people who come where they're like, they're very have a great trepidation about even broaching the subject with you.
Right.
Because even though they've heard, well, you're involved in this, they might think that, my story is so strange, you would never believe it.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Well, and we're finding out, through a lot of different people, that something that we brought up is, and I brought this up before we even started recording, is that to speak of this 100% honestly is to negate yourself, because it is so bizarre that you can't describe it. Not only can't you describe it, but then you try to. My personal belief is that there's a lot of people in this who have had significant experiences that have dialed them back. They've dialed back the level of what they'll expose to the public, in public.
Right. There are many people that would never in a bazillion years. They may not they may have had some sort of experience and may not be able to recall the experience, but the fact that they even had that experience, they're not willing to disclose.
Right.
Which is perfectly understandable.
Sure.
Now, those of us who would do have a nagging question and would like to know some kind of answer, if not the answer, at least we can have a consensus idea that something weird's going on.
Right.
And through that consensus, maybe we can arrive at a point of some kind of objective reality to what's going on.
Right.
I think, and we've started picking up a number of cases where there's pretty much nothing you could say to us that we would think was odd.
Right. Yeah. We had our fair share of odds.
Yeah.
Come up.
It's going on to this day. I fell away from the interest, not the interest in the subject, but just the need to know an answer.
Yeah.
To the point where I kind of took it and went, for many years, completely the opposite way. But it's like one of those little nagging questions that will never, ever, ever, as long as you live, let you go.
Well,
because you always have that little seed of wonder in there.
Oh, yeah. When we started doing stuff, you were the guy who, when I was seeing these disturbances in the air that looked like humps, you were the one that I told you I was seeing these things. I said, I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but I'm seeing these things. And they move, and they stay about 4 feet off the ground. They're just a hump. They're like an arc of disturbed air. And I always said that you could see them a lot better up against a white wall. And the condominium that we lived in had all white walls. Not before we left, but at that point. And and you were the guy. I called you from the shop one day, and I said, I'm seeing this thing. I'm seeing these things at work. I'm seeing them out. I'm seeing them at home. Mm-hmm. And you said, well, why don't you just think something out? And so I did, and that ended up being, I guess at that point, it answering within my own head, which startled the crap out of me. And then at some point, I don't remember if it was that day or whether it was a subsequent day down the line where I was at the shop, and I see up towards the ceiling, I see one of these beings of pretty well defined, but not solid.
Where you could go up and slap him on the back and say, right.
It, like ghost-like, see-through. I mean, definitely see-through.
Okay.
But we're talking about a big bay garage door, no lights on because it was daytime, the lights streaming in. And so you expect to see an object hovering in the air or a ball on the floor reflecting that same light that was coming in through the windows. And in fact, it wasn't. It was a completely different light source, which gave it a really eerie look. But it's floating. It's slowly moving. I can't really see a foot on one side. I can't really see an arm on the other. It's like wherever it's lit, I can see from its own light source. And I think that was at the point where I said, am I allowed to really see more? Can I see more? And I'm asking myself, can I stand more? At that point.
And your answer?
Well, here I am. How bad can you stand it? I mean, what else? I'm half here. But I thought it was pretty surrealistic that it was in the air. It wasn't on the floor. It was in the air, and so that kept going for I don't know a few months, I guess, or something like that. And
we got to the point where we pretty much taped an interview that night.
Yeah. I mean, you came over that night. And
I'll tell you, there were a lot of creepy things that were disclosed in that evening. Things that you related through whatever you were channeling, speaking to.
Channeling, that's a scary thought.
Well, what
else do you call it?
Whatever you want to call it. That, certain factors about me that you didn't have any way of knowing.
Right.
Which really creeped me out, quite frankly.
Well, and I think that Lisa, and I've talked about before that she asked me something when I said, I can see one, just think something in the corner. Don't say anything out loud, just think something in the corner. And so I answered it, and it was something that she was thinking about. It related to the kid.
Right.
And she was genuinely disturbed by that. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end of her. She'd been very tolerant throughout this whole thing, but I think that was the beginning of it's getting to be too much.
Too much, right.
Too fast,
right.
But when you came over that night, I was sitting in that chair, and you were on the couch. And I remember that it took a while for something to show up. I saw it there, and I was like, there it is. That's it. That's it right there. Did you ever see anything?
I did not.
You did not see anything?
I did not.
I remember that as we were sitting there, a red light flashed in the corner. Did you see that?
I don't recall.
Okay.
It may be on the tape.
Okay. Because I remember seeing that. I don't remember if it was a red one and a white one, just kind of a flash.
No.
Very small.
All I know is the strangest interview I've ever conducted.
Well, I don't even remember what came out. I remember the only thing that sticks out of my head that came up was your first name, your real first name, which I thought your real first name was Lee.
Right.
And it came out with, hello, your real first name.
Right.
And I was like, what does that mean? And I just blurted it out thinking, this is dumb. Maybe this is all in my head. And then you turned white.
Yeah. Well, when we got to questioning whoever it is you were speaking on behalf of, we questioned as to, do you have a name? Right. What is your name? How do we, what do we call you? And it was such a bizarre answer. I
don't remember.
You said, if I were to tell you, first off, you said you couldn't pronounce my name with your mouth.
Okay.
And I said, okay, well, I'm pretty good with linguistics and
Right.
that kind of thing. Try me.
Right.
And you said, if you would say my name out loud, it would cause the cataclysmic destruction of your universe.
Really?
I'm like, well, this is a little dramatic.
That's totally sardonic humor, isn't it?
It's completely, and that's what's so bizarre about it. I mean, it was funny. It was funny. It was funny, but it was not. But it was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've talked about that a lot.
That's a little dramatic, don't you think,
Tom?
Oh,
hell yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But in a way, I think there's a ring of truth to it, too.
Really?
Not that our universe would just kind of evaporate into a black hole.
Right.
If we said a name, how narcissistic can you be to do that?
Right.
However, what it may do is open your mind up that would destroy the world and your belief system that you have at any given moment. Yeah. And that's kind of, upon much reflection, that's the way I eventually came to interpret it. Huh. That there was some kind of intelligence, some kind of wisdom to what at first blush appears to be kind of a smart-ass answer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that really kind of gets to the point, really, of the crux of the matter, where at first I would tell people, and I'm fond of making this statement, that I used to tell people I studied UFOs, but I don't have one to study.
Right.
Right. What we study is the reports of UFOs, the reports of encounters. Right. Which means you're studying people. You're studying their cognition, the way they interpret an outside stimuli. And owing to the large amount of strangeness with this phenomenon in general, it all kind of smacks of that there's unquestionably something there. But what we say happened to us is how we can how we can describe it in such a way that would make sense to us, that we could relate to other people. Right. You were looking for an air of commonality, and we're kind of, how do you describe a rainbow to a blind man? If he doesn't have a frame of reference, we don't have that frame of reference to really interpret what this phenomenon is really all about. And then we see people who are involved in the hardcore publishing end of ufology and whatever, who will promulgate all these stories about doctors and missing fetuses and this and that and the other. And it almost, and I don't want to take away from anybody that knows in their heart of hearts that this is what happened to them. I can only offer my viewpoint and my take on it, but there almost seems to be a bit of, I would say, mass hysteria, but it's not really an hysteria. People aren't really necessarily hysterical about it. Right. But it's almost like a mass mentality. Okay, this is the little tool set of explanation that I can use now. All right. Prior to the Barney and Betty Hill story, people that had, you have George Adamski, who was visited by these people that were wonderful, benevolent space beings. Okay, that was the interpretation du jour. Barney and Betty Hill come along, all of a sudden, they're from this galaxy. Right. And they're doing gynecological experiments on Betty. Right. And I find it so interesting because they're a mixed marriage couple. Right. Mixed race couple. Right. Sorry, not mixed marriage, but mixed race couple. Right. Okay. That's what was the seed, the genesis of that mindset there. I believe the phenomenon's always been here. It just gets cloaked and explained to the limit of our capacity, either technological capacity or our ability to really understand it.
I mean, that's something that Jeremy and I have talked a lot about, is that you go back through all these different cultures, they all seem to have something to offer in this direction. Absolutely. And it all comes from their cultural filter at the time, like what is
cultural filter.
This?
That's a great expression.
And the only time that I've really seen that necessarily broken is when you're talking about some of these guys in the Amazon jungle who are, I guess, drinking copious amounts of ayahuasca and things like this, and they paint their visions. And when they paint their visions, a familiar thematic is a flying saucer comes out or a UFO comes out in these things. And that's a little weird, but but at the same time, if it's collective, it doesn't matter if they've never seen technology at all. If it's in the collective info stream.
Yeah, and that's why I said the word technology. We explain things as far as the level of our current technology will allow.
Right.
Right now we're in the space age, so we see space people.
Right.
Yeah. 100 years ago they saw dead people.
Right.
But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
And fairies, and we've talked about fairies on this show a lot, and we make a mockery of fairies by and large, but it's like I'm starting to think that, there's definitely something to the, the aspect of the cultural filter and how people see this stuff. And again, I ask the same question, why? When why, as George Hansen would tell us, is not a productive question to ask.
That's a great point.
I think for me, I've said before on this show, for me, UFOs are so 10 minutes ago. It's like it's not about that anymore.
Right.
I don't even know that I equate the large body of ufological stuff to this phenomena.
I think there's a lot of books to be sold, a lot of videotapes to be sold, and I hate to really bash the pseudoscience of ufology, but
there's plenty of it.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of self-serving motivation in there.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't really serve anybody who is being tormented,
right?
Not by little doctors or scientists, but tormented by the anxiety of not knowing some kind of answer, some kind of closure to what happened.
Do you think that brings about the people selling the books and DVDs? I've always kind of said that people are so desperate for an answer, and there's always somebody out there willing to sell it to them.
Hey, I bought into it in '88. I bought Whitley's book.
Yeah.
I have great respect for the man.
Yeah.
And to this day, he still says he doesn't know what happened.
Right.
If you really listen to it, it all depends on what you want to latch on to.
Yeah.
Okay, they gave me an implant. They did this, and they stuck something up my bum,
Right.
If you want to latch on to that, that's going to be your explanation.
Yeah.
And I think he very wisely has left the book open. He's left the final chapter open because bottom line is nobody really knows.
Right.
Because it's outside the realm of our normal experience. I can tell you that I was around, up until that one evening, which I'll relate in a few moments, up there by myself, I was racked with fear over this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was, and I know people, former research subjects and people that we've worked on their cases, who to this day, are paralyzed, and not by little beings but they're paralyzed by the fear and the anxiety and the not knowing what happened to them or what's going on. And I got to that point, and I finally said, screw it. I'm gonna be a knucklehead and face this thing head on one time.
Right.
I'm gonna do. It's like you see like the Three Stooges episode or whatever, where you have to spend the night in this haunted,
to get your uncle's inheritance.
To get your uncle's inheritance, you have to spend this night in this mansion on such and such an occasion. And so I decided to do that. I went up to the Pine Bush in the area within about a couple of miles of where Mr. Strieber's cabin used to be.
Right.
In the Catskills, southern Catskills of New York. And I said, I'm going to spend a night in the woods by myself.
In a tent.
And that's what I did. I drove up there. I pitched a tent I found a little spot. I pitched a tent there back in the woods. And it was, it was getting.
I remember you telling me about going.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what are you, crazy?
What are you, nuts?
We were up there. You saw what we saw up there. Right. Are you crazy?
And I'm like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And I did, and I went up there. Very uneventful until, so I opened up my can of Beanie Weenies, and I had my little campfire, and I,
right.
took all this, very primitive camping. I bedded down, crawled into the sleeping bag, bedded down for the night, and was like, okay, well, let's roll.
Here goes, yeah.
So I went to sleep. About 2:30 in the morning, I was abruptly awakened by what I don't know, except that I looked, I had one of those sheer nylon tents, and I could see a light traveling, through the tent material.
Right.
Just traveling, just kind of moving very slowly. And I knew it wasn't like right outside the tent because I could see like the shadow of the trees, moving. And so there was some kind of motion there, and it was like the light was flickering in through the trees.
About how high up on the tent? Like 1 to 100, 100 being the peak?
I would say, if I'm laying on the tent floor, probably maybe a 40-degree angle.
Okay. Definitely airborne.
Oh, definitely airborne.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I said in myself, and to this day, I don't know why I said it, or maybe I do, or does he?
Right, yeah.
But I said to myself, oh, it's you. And odd thing to think.
Yeah.
Oh, it's you. Which kind of suggests something. It suggests a semi-conscious or unconscious familiarity with
all this. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I said that, I was like, wham! I was transported. In my mind, I was someplace else. I mean, I have every reason to believe that my body, I was in the tent. I was still laying down in my sleeping bag in the tent. But my mind was like going 100 miles an hour. And the only way I can really describe it is like if you have a waking dream or a lucid dream, where you're totally self-aware, but you're not where you are.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
The only thing that I see in front of me, it looks like a baseball scoreboard. It's a matrix of rows and columns.
Okay.
And occupying each one of these little cells in this matrix is a symbol.
A symbol?
A symbol.
Okay.
And every cell has a different symbol in it.
Okay.
Okay, and have you ever seen like a flip movie where you flip through and you see where there's a bunch of different things, subliminal perception kind of things, where they just do a quick flash of an image? That's what every one of these cells was rolling. It was flipping a whole breakneck speed series of symbols. It was like that.
Each one.
So fast that I couldn't ever, things, it's almost like seeing a shooting star. It happens so fast by the time you go, it's gone.
Okay.
It was so fast I could not consciously assimilate. I couldn't tell you this to this day what any of the individual symbols were.
Okay.
And the only
you can't say if any of them look familiar.
Yeah,
or
it wasn't an airplane and a duck or anything,
right.
Or a star or anything.
Right.
It was just I know they were symbols, and I know they were going a bazillion miles a second. And that may be a bit of an exaggeration.
Right, yeah.
But they were going really fast.
Right.
Faster than I could look at any one, pick any one out and say, this is what it was.
Okay.
Suffice it to say. That's all I remember from that. And this went on for like a while.
Okay.
And I was like, man.
Fear?
Well, not at first.
No.
And really not ever after that. And this is what I'm getting to.
Okay.
Because, just the whole precursor of this whole thing, why did I say that? I'm like thinking to myself, why did I say, oh, it's you?
Right.
Why did I say that? Still a mystery, but whatever. All I know is the next morning I woke up. That's all I recall about the whole incident.
So you don't remember the end of it or anything?
I don't remember the end of it. It didn't have an end.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But I woke up next morning, and every bit of fear, every drop of fear was gone. It has never returned.
Really?
Never returned. like go in the woods alone? Yeah, sure, why not? Whatever.
Huh.
I used to have this horrible anxiety, this horrible fear, even of looking out the window at night.
Huh.
After that,
Nothing.
Gone. It's nothing. I think I was given a gift. And I recently wrote to Whitley about that, and he responded to me, and he did say, he suggested, he didn't say this is definitely what happened.
Right.
He wrote back, and he said, right around that period of time, he was having some very regular experiences up there.
Mm-hmm.
Regular, I mean, conscious.
Heavy, yeah.
Heavy experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's very likely that they were out there checking you out.
Huh.
Whatever that means.
Right.
You know. So, I mean, I take it with a grain of salt. But,
right.
But all I can say is I came away from that experience with no fear. And the thing is, Jeff, when the fear was gone, a lot of the motivation to even look into this went away. And that's why I dropped out of the scene.
Yeah.
And I had several active cases. We had several active cases. We were actually working at the time.
Right.
And we were like, what's the point?
Right, yeah.
You know, and then I fell away. Now, I've recently come back into, I moved out of town for several years, and I've recently come back into town. I've always kept a peripheral interest, and we've always kept in touch very sporadically throughout the years. And I know there was one photographic case that you sent to me, and just to get kind of my 2 cents worth of it. And we both agreed it was CGI. Yes,
sure.
But I'm kind of drawn back into it, but with a new set of eyes now. I'm looking at it not from a perspective of that it is of like latching onto the extraterrestrial hypothesis,
or that you're going to put it in any box for that.
Right, put it in any box, exactly. And by saying that, I definitely don't want to take away anybody who knows that they know 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 that this is what is happening to them.
Right.
More power to you. If you have a deeper understanding of it, then great.
Yeah.
It's not for me to judge. I think that's one thing that seems very common among this. It's a pretty intensely personal experience.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I've said that a lot on this. I mean, that part of the problem is that you've got the people who know it's little doctors from another planet.
Right.
Because that's what they experienced. And because that's what they experienced, it's every bit as real as my bizarre shit that seems to make no sense at all to that. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, it becomes this... I mean, we talk out a lot about the clique of ufology and how essentially... to speak out against the ETH, to speak out against regression hypnotherapy, to speak out against any of these things or the people that purport them, is to systematically be alienated, marginalized, and ignored.
Right.
Because while this is not a field, we always refer to it as the UFO field. It's not really a field.
It's not a field.
That's so loosely defined. I mean, that... when it comes to speaking out against any one thing, I recently had an encounter on this message board, a friend of mine, that, I guess the premise of alternate theories came up, and so I presented this thing called the feedback loop.
Okay.
Which is hard to get your head around. But for me, it seems to make some kind of absurd sense as to, I don't know, the mechanics of this thing, which is something we were always kind of fiddling with. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned this, and because it doesn't include space doctors and extraterrestrials,
right?
I got flack from this guy who is a long-standing older guy in the field, and ultimately, I had to say, look, you don't know what this is either, because the answer was, whoever postulates these kind of things isn't up to the ET smarts.
Right.
And immediately, our reaction to that back in the day would have been, how do you guess the alien mind? What do you know?
Right.
You don't know anything more than we do.
Right.
And so that's what I said. And, of course, there's no response to that, because there is no response to that.
Well, and, too, you also have to remember that there is not necessarily only one explanation.
Right. I'm perfectly willing to accept that some of this stuff could be that. Mm-hmm. When we had Travis Walton on the show, I said to Jeremy after we got done with him, I said, you know what? If there was ever a case for people from some other planet, maybe that's it. Maybe, just maybe. But then again, you look at it and you go, wow, it's so bizarre, though. It is as bizarre as everything else. It's just got more of a physicality about it because somebody was actually not there, was not present. People saw him be removed, out of the equation of being in the truck. All of a sudden he's on the ground. I mean,
that's all they saw, though.
Yeah, that's all they saw.
They didn't see him being picked up and lifted into the craft as some Hollywood would suggest.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We went over that quite a bit that night with him saying
sure
that's not what happened, but here's what did. When you look at what did happen or what he says happened to him, it is bizarre. He got knocked off his feet. Yeah.
And his buddy said, holy crap, let's get out of here.
And left, yeah.
Right.
Which I can't blame him.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean...
No, I can't blame him either, right?
But it's, and then, but you look at that and you think, that could be something like, it's been a one-off event for him, although, I'll say this, I asked him, and I haven't told you this yet, I asked him, have you seen anything else? Have you ever seen like an upsurgence of poltergeist activity in your home, or have you seen another UFO? Or
no comment.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. He said I would.
Yes.
I think he said something to the effect of like his wife had told him, if you had, don't talk about it anyway.
Enough.
Yeah. And so one wonders, about that case. I think for my money, it's a good case. I like
example for your, example of marginalization.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and so with us, when I look back over the history of how my life like degraded into a 3-ring circus, which because you were part.
I was part of the circus. I had a few acts. I was in the clown car for that.
Right. I mean, it's like it gets to be too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Right.
And I know that when we went up to Pine Bush, that at least when we were on our way out, we had seen the lemur out behind McDonald's. We had drove Searsville Road like gobloads of times. And I remember the one thing that sticks out in my head about that was, number one, having read Ellen Crystal's Silent Invasion. I'm waiting for some kind of enormous thing to come over top the truck, and it never happened.
Never happened. Fancy
but yeah. But we had drove by a field during the daytime on Searsville Road. If you came out of McDonald's and went left to Searsville Road towards the cemetery, correct? You make a right on Searsville Road and go down there. I don't know how far it was. It wasn't very far down. There was a field with cows. During the daytime, there was cows in that field on the left. And when we went by there at night, we stopped. You said, stop right here. And when we stopped, it felt like there was an auditorium load of people in that field watching us. And they didn't want us there.
Right.
And you looked at me, and I looked at you, and we said it at the same. You feel that,
right?
And it was palpable. And then I think it wasn't long after that we were leaving, and we saw this gold light on top the hill we had just come off of.
Right.
Very bright. This was no star. I mean,
it was not a star.
Very bright.
It had some scintillation to it, which is fairly typical of what we would call a quote-unquote, for lack of a better term, an alien light.
Right, sparkly, etherical
weird,
looking.
Right, yeah. Almost multicolored, but it has a basic hue to it.
Of gold.
But it's but it's all like...
Right, but the thing was... and
it's
the
not
thing
like a regular incandescent static light.
No way, no way.
Which you could pick out a mile away.
Sure.
Or 10 miles away.
The thing that got me about it was that at that distance, I don't think there would have been that much scintillation in play. That was not far.
No,
it wasn't like this is a distant mountain.
It wasn't cold enough to have a lot of those scintillation effects.
No,
anyway.
no. I mean, but this thing was not far enough to be doing that. This was relatively close. And when you think back on it, the thing that I've thought about in trying to mentally picture that again. Do you remember there being any reflected light on the mountain itself?
I do not.
I don't either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't either.
No, there definitely was. It was a single point light source, and it was definitely on the mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And so you said, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
I was you're out of your fucking mind. And we did. We went up there, and there was nothing there.
Right.
I mean, we literally drove to the top of that damn peak, and there was nothing.
Welcome to cat and mouse.
Right, right. And so, we left, and as we left, I see this ball of smoke beside the road, and I don't open my mouth, because you want to stop and have a conversation with it.
Well.
But, that right there, to go up there, and I've said before on this show, that was largely the most uncomfortable place I've ever been. Mm-hmm. I mean, just really uncomfortable. Not only, not only just.
Jeff, you should take a tent up there and spend the night in the woods alone.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I mean,
it's not so bad.
I mean, it's just. Well, we have Phil and Brogno who wants to take us up to the sites that he recognizes.
Let's go.
Area,
Let's go.
Want to go?
I want to go. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh Christ! It looks like I'm going.
Yeah. Come on.
But
in fact, why don't we get a bus? Get all your listeners in there. And
well, that's the plan. Is we're going to take some listeners and we're going to go and
splendid idea.
But it's not an overnighter. It's just like going up to Hawk Rock, I think it's called. Jeremy's not seen that before. He has been up to these magnetic sites, and Phil says these magnetic sites that they look like there's what looks like an artificial structure there.
As I understand it, those mountains are almost pure iron.
Yeah. And there's a lot of very
huge
weird
iron
magnetic stuff.
Yeah.
And that brings me to this question for you. Being as you were staying in that area in a tent, with your head on the ground, ostensibly on the ground.
I think I see where you're going with this.
Here's the thing: is just last night I'm listening to Terrence McKenna, who's a big favor on this show. I really mention him quite a lot because he brings up he probably brings up more good points about ufology than any ufologist has ever thought of. He talks about the production of DMT in the brain. And oddly enough, the fact that for me, I think for you in large part, a lot of these things, do you feel that a lot of these things tend to center around between 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, maybe close to 4? Have you had a lot of experiences around that time?
In the wee hours of the day, yes, absolutely.
That is apparently the time when the brain tends to dump the DMT, is in your normal dream time.
Okay.
Of that.
Logical.
And so he says, and of course
whether you're awake or not, right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, he's into a point now where he's, where I'm listening to him where, and he's always said that, he questioned whether or not hallucination was a good word to use in describing a psychedelic experience on DMT or the psilocybin or anything like that.
Right, because
he questions, what am I seeing?
Right.
And so I think he's
that suggests that it's internally generated.
Right. And he negates that and says, I don't think, because my mind cannot come up with the stuff that I saw. And that's a familiar theme that kind of runs through these things.
Right.
Do you think that the environment itself in Pine Bush, not the place as in a geological spot, but in the sense of the earth in that spot, is admittedly unique, no?
Yes, without a doubt.
Okay, so that being the case...
There are tons of magnetic anomalies up there.
Do you think that opens you up to, certain tenets of reality we can't normally see?
From a true scientific perspective, it's already been established that the way our interpretation of events goes is definitely subject to electromagnetic variances.
Right.
That being said, I mean, particularly in the frontal lobe area, which is where we have a sense of our surroundings, as I understand it.
Right.
That you can actually induce people through high doses of focused electromagnetic radiation into the frontal lobe area into people feeling that they're being watched or that they're in the presence of someone else.
Dr. Persinger's God helmet
There's
thing.
even deeper. I mean, there's even deeper and a lot more focused technology that deals specific with certain aspects or certain segments of the electromagnetic spectrum as it applies to the brain. Oh, come on, we're bioelectrical devices. It really is what our bodies are,
right?
And therefore are subject to manipulation of some sort. So absolutely.
And that's not to say
there's a scientific basis for that too. That's not just well, this is what I think,
right? Right, sure, yeah,
yeah.
But that again doesn't answer the bigger question of what the hell is it?
Well, that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can go over the geological. We had a geologist on at one point during the show who talked about, people seeing ghosts. And the catch-all answer, it seems from like a lot of people in the ghost community is, oh, the hotel's built on granite and running water. And Rob Beck was the geologist that came on. He said, well, at the level of depth that is, that would have very little impact.
Yeah, the piezoelectric effect is actually quite minimal. I would think, scientifically speaking, if you're on a mountain made of iron, you probably have the potential to be subject to a lot more high-intensity electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic radiation. The potential is there, greatly more so than if you're sitting on a big quartz crystal.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and the thing that I've kind of gone in that direction of, my favorite saying is, it may start in your head, but it ends on the floor. And the question is, how do you tie a string from one to the other? Right,
exactly. And this is kind of again, getting back to what the crux of this whole deal is it's how do you describe something that we don't have maybe a lexicon for?
Right.
I think there's enough circumstantial evidence out there by people who have come forward and admitted, they can put it in their own little box of this is what happened to me. But if you erase their interpretation of it and just go with the hardcore fact of something occurred in these people's lives,
right?
Something they interpreted that is outside the normal realm, not counting those people who are scared to death to come forward.
Right.
And we've seen it from the support group of people who otherwise lead absolutely normal, completely.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much vanilla lives, you know?
Yeah.
Except for this one little element where aliens come and take them.
Right. I know. It really is.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's enough of that out there to suggest pretty much, not circumstantially, that I don't think any jury would ever come back and say, nope, there's nothing happening.
Right.
They have to admit that there is something going on.
Yeah.
What exactly it is, I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows? That's what Bob used to say. Are they real?
Well, it depends on what you mean by real.
What do you mean by real?
Right. Yeah. And that's I'm still, I don't know, I guess I'm still more or less kind of, I've walked away from this show to a certain degree because I just had enough. I'd had enough. And it wasn't.
Oh, I heard it was some men in black came and told you better knock this stuff off.
Well, that was the first time. That was the first time.
Right.
The second, this past time, it was like, I'm just done. I'm done because the field continues to descend into absurdity. The old guard continues to defend its position, and to speak out against that is a no-no. But everyone that we've had as a guest on this show has, and we've had Bruce Maccabee, we've had Phil and Brockner. These are both guys who've been in this for decades.
Sure.
And they don't ascribe as much as some of these other people do to it, who are a lot more vocal.
Right.
And I know
I have the answer. Send $14.95 for my book, and I will tell you what it is.
Exactly. Or, what started out when we first met. And here's an interesting story for anybody listening who cares about this stuff. When we first met,
oh God, here we go. Yeah,
you knew people at Operation Right to Know. And I remember sitting in the floor at the condo lettering signs for them to do that. Mm-hmm. How that has erupted since that point has been exopolitics, which is now a huge thing that is going global.
I know.
For all of this stuff.
And I watch it. I keep tabs on it. Yeah.
And that all has just exploded from, the government knows and they won't tell us, to, again, the ideology of the extraterrestrial. I mean, the last X conference that I went to in D.C., you'd have laughed because Jeremy has huge balls when it comes to getting up in front of people at a conference.
Good.
And we're sitting there, and the guy who runs the conference is up there talking, and it's a panel. The whole big panel discussion is going on. And there's a lot of talk of extraterrestrial this and extraterrestrial that. And I said to Jeremy, how do they know?
How do they know?
How do they know?
Right.
What? I don't know.
Right.
How do they know?
They don't.
And and so
and I think
Jeremy asked that question.
Exopolitics thing, you took the conspiracy theorists and threw them into a shaker with ice with UFO buffs and shook it up and hit them in a blender, and this is what you got.
Yeah. But the problem now is that
they might be right.
Well, I mean, but the thing the thing is to stand up and to say in front of all these people. Jeremy stood up and said, "I just want to know how any of you qualify this as extraterrestrial when you've built this whole diplomatic, infrastructure underneath of this. How do you qualify that that's what it is?" And immediately out of the audience comes a woman who says, "What are you here for?" I mean, that's the kind of reaction that you get.
What are we here for?
And then the operator of this conference says, he'll debate Jeremy anytime. It is concretely, absolute, without a doubt, extraterrestrial. Confirmed, I believe, was one of the...
Confirmed?
By whom? Really? Right, exactly.
By whom?
Exactly.
And this is where we've come to, Jeff, I think, in the point of our pseudo-careers in this pseudo-science, pseudo-UFOs.
Right.
We start out, and many people do, and many people take this track. You start out as a hardcore believer.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any other information.
Yeah. Well, you're a child to it.
Exactly. And the more we grow into it and we learn to question things, the more investigation we actually do, and we tend to kind of start shading over to the side of skepticism. Yeah. And I don't mean the hardcore, you guys are all wackos.
Not the fundamentalist skeptic
not the Fox
position.
News version of of skepticism, but healthy skepticism. Mm-hmm. Let's not rule it out. I guess it's probably more agnostic than maybe skeptic. Mm-hmm. I allow for the possibility of it, but let's explore it a little bit more. Let's find out. Let's ask some more questions, because as soon as we get an answer to a question, we're going to have 10 more questions. Right. So, I mean, and all of that is part and parcel of really moving us forward in our understanding of really what's going on. And God only knows. We may even come up with some sort of answer. My gut feeling is, when the answer is arrived at, even though a preposition is something you should never end a sentence with, we're going to find it intensely personal. Mm. We're going to find the answer to be very personal.
Do you feel that...
or the answers.
Answers.
Yes.
Do you feel that there is a acceleration of sorts of this stuff?
With me there is.
Well, as far as arriving at some kind of answer or arriving at some sort of revelation about this, do you think one is forthcoming before they put us in the ground?
Are you trying to pigeonhole me into saying, well, there's going to be disclosure by December 20th,
God,
2012?
No. If I hear that one more time, I'll drown myself.
I don't know. Maybe. Okay. There's the easy answer. Yeah. It depends. We could go hardcore, hippie. Yeah. Right. Esoteric, and say, well, if the Illuminati lets us. Right. Then, right. There again, and it keeps going back, Jeff, to the thing where I believe it's It's going to be a personal thing. It's on a personal level. It's a personal revelation.
Yeah.
And really, I half jokingly say, that it was a gift, that loss of fear or whatever imprint of messages were given to me through that flip movie of symbols that made me lose all fear about the thing. Now, who's to say that wasn't internally generated?
Yeah.
And it's just a part of the human growth, As we get more answers, you shine the light in the darkness, and then you see that there was nothing there to be afraid of.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Do you, I as much as I didn't understand it when I first watched Communion, the film Communion, and we've had the director on the show, actually, of that show. Yeah, of that movie. And, I still think to date that it's the most bizarre thing people don't get. That's probably one of the most important films to watch, to see how bizarre, at least to corner the nature of the bizarre.
The bizarreness that was in that film was about a tenth
of what it is.
Really
but at least it included
allegedly
it.
Occurred.
Right.
But
at least it included it as this surrealistic bizarreness. And when I first watched that, and I saw the end where Christopher Walken playing Whitley says, maybe this is how evolution responds to a conscious mind. And I thought, what the hell does that mean?
I know, that is very cryptic, but if you really get into it...
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Now you're seeing it. But now you're seeing it. It's like this, it is doing that to some degree. It is pushing us.
He's very fond of saying, you peer into that face in the darkness, and it's really the reflection of evolution looking down at us. Of our evolution.
And that's just...
And that,
you can't get your head around that.
The first time I heard that, I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
You come to an understanding as you mature in delving into this and trying to come to grips and trying to come to terms, trying to come to some understanding. You kind of get a sense of what that really means.
Yeah.
And not saying that anybody who's on that path right now, that this is the marker where you've arrived.
No.
Or anything.
No.
I would never presume, I wouldn't be so presumptuous as to even suggest that. I just know, this is part of my personal journey with it, and it's been quite illuminating in a lot of ways. And it's still, with any discovery, as I said before, you answer one question, you get 10 more questions out of it. Right. It's great. It's a part of growth. It's how we grow. So we've become skeptical. We've become skeptics. Yeah. And you and I know that one case, that Ford meat case in particular, we can't definitively say, okay, that Polaroid that we were given that was taken in 1973 was a hoax.
Right, no.
But we can give pretty strong evidence that's probably what it was. Because we duplicated the conditions
perfectly. Including the shot spot. I mean, yeah.
And that was a case that Bruce was interested in. Yeah. And he had taken, I think he still got the originals.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we kind of blew the lid off of that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I can't even, a lot of them I've blurred together over the years that I can't remember a lot of the ones that we went out on.
Yeah.
I know that I know that there was one that we continuously went up to the spot with the church where we were near the exact spot that Lisa and I had our big experience on, and we went up there on numerous occasions to videotape these lights, and we filmed objects up there.
They look like normal airplanes at first, but then they go zing.
until they start zigzagging across the sky and whatnot. And that spot, and I talked to you about this on the phone. I'm starting to wonder myself what geologically about that spot is interesting.
Well, that particular area and all through that corridor, I don't know the geophysics of that area. Mm-hmm. However, I know that my GPS goes a little wacky when I drive in that area.
Yes. Yes.
So there's some kind of, I would only surmise that there's some kind of magnetic anomaly or electromagnetic anomaly that's going on around there.
Yeah.
Okay, you go with that hypothesis. Let's say, okay, all right, you're only seeing these things because you're getting, super magnets are affecting your brain to a point where you're seeing odd stuff in the sky.
Yeah, and I don't think that's it.
I don't think that's it either. I think
No.
that's the simple answer. I think that's the get off my back and leave me alone answer.
Right.
Because it could also beg the question, well, maybe this just makes us a little more receptive to what's really there.
Right.
Okay, so what you're looking at is you're looking at the external and the internal, trying to resolve the external with the internal.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to extrapolate an objective reality from a subjective experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, usually in life that's done on basis of consensus.
Right.
We agree that is a red dress sitting there.
Right.
And we say the dress is red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at every word of that. The implies one, implies an article.
Mm-hmm.
There's something there. We both agree that there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
We agree that article is in the shape, is made of cloth, is in the shape of what we have come to commonly agree is a dress.
Mm-hmm.
May have different stylistic tastes about it, but we agree that it's a dress. So we both say that dress is red. Next word is. We both agree that it has a corporeal reality, that it exists.
Right.
Okay. And then we say red, which is a qualitative, white light shine upon it reflects a certain wavelength of light into our receptors called our eyes, and we interpret it, and that we have an agreement on what we define as red.
Mm-hmm.
You're a color guy.
Right.
How many different reds are there?
No, forget about it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Okay. But we can agree generally that this dress is red.
Right.
Okay, we come up with a consensus reality that what is sitting on that chair is a red dress.
Mm-hmm.
We say the dress is red. We're defining it.
Right.
We come to that. We don't have the luxury of being able to do that with this phenomenon.
Right.
And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Do
you agree with the statement that Don said to me? I asked him, I said, what are they? What is it? And he goes, well, I don't know what it is, but I can tell you one thing. If you put one of them on a stage with 100 people in the room, only 50 of them would see
50 of them would see it. Interesting. Interesting.
And Don, a great guy, not super analytical, would you say? Would that be a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
And when he said that, I was like, what?
What you see is what it is.
Oh, yeah.
He's a basic...
He's a simple man.
No nonsense.
Yeah, he's not complicated.
He's a simple man.
No,
yeah.
he's
Agreed.
a very down to earth, hardworking guy.
Yep.
And when that came out of his mouth, I was like, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
And now I get it.
Yeah.
Back then, it was like, I don't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, the nature of perception we talked about from the get-go.
Right.
And I think that's got boatloads to do with it the sense of what we see.
No question.
The problem is, for me, at this point is, there's this perception,
mm-hmm.
and then there's the manifestation of that perception into something. Like you used to say, can you ping a rock off of it?
Right.
I've had things that I could, that I put my hands on, that I hit, or that I touched.
You can feel them.
I can touch it.
Them. Right.
But again, it's all going through the 3-pound universe between my ears. So, I mean, all of this, again, goes back to questioning what real is. What does that mean?
Exactly.
And so is that where you feel like this is leading us to question what it is?
And that's the part of evolution. The evolution not of us to becoming more upright in the way we walk as human beings, but in our mind, in our spiritual development, in our realization of our connectedness with each other, that we really are on a spiritual level, not necessarily not on a physical level, but and it is a part of the evolution of where we're going.
Is there an evolver?
Yeah, it's that Beatles record.
Right. That's Revolver.
That's a great question. That's.
Do you think there is, or do you think it's us?
My personal opinion.
I looked into the face of the alien, and his reflection was me.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I believe there's an evolutionary force at work, as much as whatever caused with the prevalent belief of the creation of the universe is, which has until recently been thought of as the Big Bang.
Right.
Now even that's getting
in question.
Looked at because we've come to a deeper understanding.
Right.
It's an evolutionary process, and that's really the meaning, I think, of what Whitley was trying to convey.
Right.
With that.
So if there's a, I don't want to tread down the path of creationism and all that, but
we don't have to go there.
If there's if there is,
except for the fact that we should agree that there has been a first cause.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thought of something that isn't us, that is evolving the species of us to something a lot bigger, a lot more aware. Let's put it that way. A lot more aware than we already are now. I've asked Jeremy this question because it kind of falls in the line with what he has said often, which is, I said, well, what do you think? Well, if they're making us better or they're waking us up. You mentioned waking up a lot.
Right.
Like we need to wake up out of this.
Right.
Like what is this? And you made the great analogy that I still use to this day. Like where are they? If I could stick my finger through this, and you just put your finger in the air. Like if I could stick my finger through this, that's where I think they are.
Right.
That's going to be a really uncomfortable thought to a lot of people. Right? Because if they're extraterrestrial, they can go away.
Right.
But I don't like the idea that they're in my room right now watching me, that kind of I think that's part of the resistance of what this is. It's like I don't
like it.
Right, exactly. But Jeremy I've often said to him, I said, well, what are they waking us up for? His answer to me is that, well, if we're all one, then they're adding to the one. They're adding more. They're adding complexity.
Right. And you're starting you're getting out of the skepticism, you're getting out of the as close as you can get to true science into it.
Right.
You're getting to the point of making the leap of faith of spirituality. It's down to a spirituality question, where
it's unavoidable.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
It kind of is. But there again, it's a line along the continuum.
Yeah.
And as our universe expands, or as our minds expand, as our understanding, our knowledge, intelligence, technology, whatever, as that expands, we need to keep lockstep.
Right.
What we call real.
Right.
And I think we are coming to a point in the evolution of mankind where there are more and more numbers of people that are starting to recognize that interconnectedness that we have with each other.
Right.
That and this is really mainly pertaining to Western world, Western mindset, which has been the basis of culture and knowledge and understanding, even though, our books are just now telling us something that the Native Americans and the Eastern philosophies have known for thousands of years.
Right.
Yeah,
we're the slow boat.
We're in the slow boat. We have this cocky attitude that we're the forerunners of all this thought.
Right.
It does require the leap of faith.
Yeah.
And with any interpretation of trying to seek that consensus reality, that consensus objective reality of something, we have to agree on it. And coming to that point of agreement is in itself a leap of faith.
Yeah.
We can see something. We don't necessarily we have a tendency, and probably correctly so, to define things by what they are not.
Right. Right.
The dress is red. Okay, what's the antithesis of that? And that is kind of, you really get, you want to get real deep into this.
Right.
That's the source of the three knocks in Whitley's.
Right. Right.
It's question, answer, or question, response, and then the resolution of the two.
Right. Well, it's hard not. I mean, one of the things that becomes hard about.
How do we agree that a dress is red? Because it's not blue.
Right.
It's not black. It's not white.
Right.
It's maybe a reddish.
It's specific.
Right.
Falls in that
We define it by its delimiting attributes.
Right. I think you have to qualify real in the sense of can you experience
All right, Mr. Clinton.
Can you? Can you define it as, can you put that into, like, if you can experience it?
Certainly not. We take that leap of faith. And really, if you really want to, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We get to, that was the beauty of Carl Sagan's story, Contact.
Right.
You have this person who only deals with empirical data that is begging people to understand things on a leap of faith, asking people to have a leap of faith.
Based on experience.
And then you have the man of faith who's always known it all along. And he's asked to recognize the legitimacy of the need for empirical proof.
Right.
A very interesting play between those two concepts.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to, of course, get to everything in this episode because we're running out of time.
Oh, darn!
Yeah. But I want to have you back.
I'd be pleased to.
And in fact, if we get, when we go into the next phase of this and we start getting really good guests lined up, some of them
sucky ones like me, right?
Right, not the stand-ins one like you. I'd like you to sit in on a couple of them.
I'd be pleased to. I'd be quite honored to.
So I will. I'll
this
be
stuff
in touch.
Still fascinates me.
Yeah,
it really does. And a lot of people are saying, "Well, you don't believe in me anymore. You don't believe that I was pregnant and then I wasn't." I'm not saying anything of the sort.
Right.
I believe that if that's what you believe, then who am I to say?
Right. Yeah.
I think there's more to it, though.
Yeah.
I think there's a hell of a lot more.
Well, next time you come on, the one thing I want to talk about is like the multi-levels of experience, because I bring that up, and a lot of people email and say, I don't get what you mean by that.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that on the next
maybe we can get together and confuse them even further.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lee. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
And everybody.
Hi, Jeremy. I look forward to meeting you face to face. Chase those tornadoes away, dude.
Jeremy was supposed to come down. I was supposed to have dental work, and they decided to put me on antibiotics for like a week before they do the dental work. So it's like everything got screwed this weekend. Jeremy with the tornado, me with my damn teeth. So if anybody out in the cosmos is listening, I could use a new set of teeth. Anyway.
They don't come cheap.
No, I know. But I will. I'll be in touch, and we'll get you back on very soon.
Splendid, thanks, Jeff.
We'll see y'all back here in about 2 minutes.
This is Colin Andrews, and you're listening to Paratopia.
If you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're cyberears.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. CyberEars.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to CyberEars.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With CyberEars.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Hey everybody, this is Stacey Lowry.
And this is Jeremy Vaeni.
Tune in to the Black Fridays at theblackfridays.net, where we explore the world one conversation at a time.
On Sunday. How does that work?
I have no idea.
Can you say I have no idea a little louder?
I'm sorry, Mr. Scorsese.
I'm sorry. Well, no, just because I'll keep it. That works.
Okay, I need some
So the Jeff. So the Jeff.
So the Jer. What's up?
So you're not allowed to screw with a formula. When we've got a catchphrase, people expect to hear it. They can't be thrown off like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like pausing after "What you talking about, Willis?" without a laugh track or something. You know, it's like just jarring.
It's my goddamn podcast. I'll do what I wish.
Oh, well, I guess I'll go now. Actually, this week it was your podcast, for I was apparently living in Tornado Alley.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
How'd you make out? How'd that feel for you?
I made out just fine compared to other people, so I can't complain. Except to say that there have been a lot of tornado watches since then, and the weather's been really weird. It doesn't seem to show any signs of letting up.
Were you in the apartment when that all went down? I mean,
yeah, I was at my computer, and I saw the top of the tree outside my window just shaking ferociously, and then it looked like The Wizard of Oz, where you see like things flying by. It was like I saw a branch of the tree like fly off almost in like slow motion, like went, it like gained speed and then smacked against the building, either our apartment building or the one next to me. But no damage that I know of. So that's so good. I decided to get away from the window. And as you know, go take a shower, which is probably the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah. So you didn't know it was coming or anything. It just kind of, you were just sitting there minding your own.
It was storming out. And the storm, it was like one of those like massive downpours that like goes by in about 10 minutes. And so within that 10 minutes, there was about 3 minutes of severe wind just by looking at that tree. So it must have been within that 3 minutes. I mean, then you go outside and it's like Armageddon. It's like, you know.
Wow.
Trees down in cars, buildings, and all of that. And my sister, who lives in Brooklyn, a friend of hers went out to Prospect Park and found a horseshoe crab. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, horseshoe grows in Brooklyn. That's funny. So yeah, 2 tornadoes and a macro burst wind, whatever the hell that means. So they're saying that did the most damage, this macro burst wind. It's like, I've never heard of this, because, you know, I've always heard of hurricanes, and then you tape up your windows and all of this. But apparently just randomly a macro burst wind can happen where winds get up to about 125 miles an hour. It's like, oh, really? That's never heard of that. Good to know.
Yeah. Well, I got a place down the beach, and about, 3 years ago, we got a call from the neighbors that, the roof on the porch had blown off. I said, how does that happen? And that's exactly what they called it. It was a macro burst wind. And, of course, everybody there, I back up against the canal. The house backs up against the canal on the bay side, because it's a peninsula. And a lot of people on the canal were saying it was like a miniature tornado came up the canal. So yeah, those things happen. But man, New York, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, the weather's really bizarre now. It feels like a as my sister said again today, tropical rainforest, except with the smells of New York.
Man, that's just humid, something I don't want to think about.
It's humid here to the point of walking around outside. I wasn't sure if it was my glasses, but there's like a fine mist. Like you can see it in the air. You're inhaling water, essentially. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. Actually, I do know what's going on here.
Yeah, well, we had a kind of a weird weather day. Excuse me, in the sense that the interstate, that's, I guess, the closest interstate to my house, I left for work about 10 o'clock, and there were 4 emergency rescue, trucks out, and I thought, what are they doing? It was raining, and it was raining hard, but apparently parts of the interstate had flooded that I have never seen flooded in all the time that I've been living up this direction in Maryland, and they were pulling at least 4 cars out of an intersection down by my wife's work. So, flooding, like right in the middle of a street that doesn't even seem to be in a in a valley at all. I mean, it was a lot of rain.
It's funny to bitch about this online, like I did on Facebook and probably some others, probably our own Paratopia site. Is to have people go, yeah, get used to it. I mean, I live in Tornado Alley. I see tornadoes all the time. It's no big deal. Quit your bitching. And it's like, no, you don't get it. We don't get tornadoes here. And now it's like this constant thing. Like we had a tornado somewhere over the course of the summer also in Queens that didn't affect me. It was a small thing. I mean, the fact that the weather patterns are changing is the problem.
Yeah.
More so than my own personal, gripes with nature. I mean, that it's the scary thing is the weather patterns are changing. It's like you're seeing the sort of doomsday scenario of whatever this is,
Yeah, it is kind of weird. It's kind of weird.
In any event, we're here now, and so why don't we talk about your little conversation with Lee? Tea and crumpets with Lee.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Nothing.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. I was shocked that he sounded a lot like you and me. Like I was very surprised by how exactly, like, if I were in on that conversation, I think I would have felt as though I had known Lee for the last 10 years, Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I first met him, he did a lot of listening. I remember, because I was in a pretty weird space at that time, and he did a lot of listening, and ultimately, I mean, we kind of grew into that role of being research partners on this stuff, both on each other's stuff and then external things that had nothing to do with either of us. And I'd say within a real short period of time, we both kind of arrived at the same sort of place with this, in that the nuts and bolts didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to us, but there were parts of it that were real, and we kind of, I don't know, a lot of what I still say, even these days, we had been saying 10, 12, 13 years ago, and really our viewpoints on this stuff, despite the fact that we had been out of touch, regular touch for a number of years, didn't seem to really matter. We just kind of fell right back into the same level of discussion on the thing. But he's a great guy. He's one of my closest friends, and it was a great joy that he agreed to come on and talk. I mean, I thought that was great. Well, I thought we are going to have him back, by the way, too. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had talked about making him a sort of an unofficial third host or special guest host or something. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought you guys both really nailed the Strieber. This is what the face of evolution looks like to us when applied to a sentient species. Right. I thought you guys really fleshed that out well, that most people who probably didn't get it before might be able to understand that better now.
Yeah.
And I also, I'm just fascinated by going into a fog bank, seeing giant birds. I mean, I've had another friend who told me going into a fog bank, seeing a glowing being, and coming out, and having some sort of missing time, but he doesn't really know what to make of it. This was a guy I was in an improv group with, way back when he found out I was into UFOs, I guess the mid-90s. Told me the story, didn't know what to make of it. I wasn't sure if he was kidding, he wasn't. And you hear it every now and then. And in fact, like, the most convincing Bermuda Triangle story of late is the guy who goes into the fog bank and comes out ahead of time or something,
Right.
I mean, and that's not an quote-unquote alien thing, but there's a time slip or a missing time. I don't remember what it is. I think... but somehow he ends up traveling, the length of the country and in no time.
Yeah, he comes out way ahead of schedule, way ahead of where he should be.
So what is this with the fog and the time, and what is that? I mean, do we have an answer for this? Is there anything in science that we know of? Wormholes and fog? I don't know.
Wormholes and Fog. That should be a name of a book right there. Or my new band. That's my new band name, Wormholes and Fog. I mean...
and young.
And young, right. I think back in the day, and I'm going to take a stab at this, and Lee will probably tell me if I'm wrong or right. A lot of things that we talked about in the sense of what we remembered from certain things. I mean, a lot of things were seamless. When he talks about the fog bank and stuff like that, I think at one point we kind of chalked it up to some kind of screen memory at one point, but as time goes on, I wonder about screen memory, like what that even means, if that's even in play with this. I don't know. I mean, when you think about a fog and the way that he describes that fog, is that a tear? Is that a dissolution of, the physical state into some other state that you're passing through or that you're inside of? In that, I mean, God, who knows? I mean, what's the birds have to do with that? What is that about? Here's the constant: inexplicably weird and ambiguity. I mean, there it is. There's the two things that are constant in all of that stuff. That was, I think, back in the day, that's kind of where we left it, is that, the experiences were not being accurately reported in a lot of cases that we read about publicly. And we always found that strange, because anytime we would go to an experience or support group, or hell, even like a big MUFON thing, and I remember we went to one in DC some years ago together, and we got a lot of stories of encounters from people that were just beyond the pale of bizarre and weird. But yet you didn't read that in the literature when you started talking about abduction or visitor experience stuff. And the more that we got into the midst of researchers, that's how we kind of found out that, well, they're kind of leaving these things out. They're not really talking about this stuff because it doesn't fit. It doesn't seem to jive with what they're reporting in a book or on a TV show or whatever. That part is inexplicably left out. And so, bizarreness being the bastard stepchild of ufology, that's where we decided to look more. And that's how we kind of arrived at where we're at now with it. So,
did his story of seeing the symbols, I think it was out at Pine Bush, did that come out more DMT trippy than you expected?
No, I mean, he always had related that to me as that he wasn't physically somewhere else, that this was visionary. So I knew that. The fact that it was all of these different symbols, of which were indecipherable to him. In fact, he said he couldn't even draw one. If you asked me to draw one of them that you saw, he couldn't do it. I mean, that kind of feels like that psychedelic feel to it a little bit. Yeah, I guess it was a little bit trippier, but not unexpectedly. So, I mean, I don't think it was unexpected that it had that flavor to it. Because I think we've kind of grown, I don't know, kind of used to hearing that sort of thing. Just that very bizarre quality, that psychedelic quality to some of these experiences that just kind of is a constant thread to a lot of this. What do you think that was? Why do you think that was, or why do you think that simultaneously reacted to fear being removed? What do you think that experience had to do with that?
I have no idea. This one really stumps me. I'm trying to think. I mean, when you had fear removed from you,
that's a lot different. That was like, yeah, I mean,
did it have to do with symbols or no?
No, it had to do with somebody putting their hand up.
But you didn't see symbols.
No, not at that point. No. Okay. I'll describe that feeling. When the hand went up, it wasn't as if to say stop. It was a limp. It was a hand like not straight out like stop. It was kind of like this. Just kind of a half bent hand. This doesn't work on the radio. I know. It was just a relaxed outward hand, and I gotta say, in the sense of being calm and at peace, this was different from that. This was almost, there was a certain amount of relief, but it also had an anesthetic quality to it, if that makes any sense to the description.
Sure.
I think that had a lasting effect on me for a period of days. I think what Lee experienced was, I mean, it was strange, because I'll say this, and I know he's listening, but I, and I would say this directly to him too. He seemed a different person when he came back. There was something definitely different about him, and something definitely more at peace with this subject. That it seemed like the fire of the wanting to know, the desire, the driving, spike was kind of removed. That kind of I don't know, that burn didn't seem to be there for him as much.
Well,
he seemed much more at peace with it.
Do you see a link between fear and wanting to know what this is? Do you think fear drove him to want to know what this is, or do you think he was anesthetized with the whole thing? It was kind of like, forget about this interest, go away.
No. I think, and again, I can't speak for him, but I think that that both of us got highly fed up with the fear part of it, and he took the much bolder step that I decidedly would not have taken. Which was to go up there to spend the night in a tent in the woods in Pine Bush. I mean, what? That to me was incomprehensible when he said, "This is what I'm going to do." And I think my exact words are, "You crazy?" I mean, what? But he did it, and I admire the hell out of that kind of courage to do that. I think it just gets to be a point of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of being afraid. And so to go up there, and I guess from his standpoint, maybe it was to go up and face it, meant to finally put those kind of fears to rest or confront them or something like that. That's probably where the growth comes in. That's probably where I'm stunted.
Well, clearly.
You know? Yeah.
Well, getting back to the symbols, I mean, one thing the symbols could be, symbols speak to us unconsciously. So maybe they are, even if he doesn't recognize them consciously, unconsciously, maybe he does. Maybe they were saying something to him that was so fundamental that is what did it. That's what took away his fear.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
A certain way to look at it, yeah. I
don't know. Something in me wants to steer the conversation to what we were talking about privately about dreams. Just in that, I've been watching things on Joseph Campbell, and I've been watching, Yale courses on psychology and talking about dreams and how sort of the predominant theory on dreams is that they are about working out and resolving or issues, or actually teaching you how to resolve issues that are of import. And so that when you're a kid, commonly your nightmare would be of being chased by a wolf or a bear, because that's what our ancestors were chased by. And so you sort of see how to get away from a wolf or a bear. And then you get into high school age and it, transforms into whatever, the high school scenario, the high school version of that. But it's all basically a version of that you would have to deal with in life. And a few nights ago, well, actually more than a few nights ago, I had a dream where I was shot. And I've had a dream where I was shot before. And every time I have a dream where I'm shot, it's always the same feeling. It's like you can feel the blood gurgling in your lungs, and you can feel a numbness, not really pain. And there's the thing of knowing you're going to die. Like, you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so deal with that. And then the moment when I die, of course, I wake up. So a couple of nights ago, however, I had an alien abduction dream where I was on a bus, and I was sitting in front of the bus, and suddenly, the sound stopped, and I looked behind me, and everyone was just frozen in time. Whatever they were doing in action, they were frozen in time. And there's a light that shines down, and I'm like, oh God, this is an abduction, and there's nothing I can do. And it's the terror, dread, and all of that stuff. And I don't see what's abducting me, but I just know it. I know what this is, and I'm fucked. And now it's a matter of, I'm still awake in this. I'm still this abduction is going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. And so how do I deal with the fear? And in there was knowing okay, they might take me and I might not come back. Or it was just I remember in the dream thinking about missing time and thinking about, maybe if I just shut my eyes and try to deal with the fear, when I open my eyes, the missing time will have happened and I won't remember any of the stuff in between, so it won't matter.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is going through my head of how to deal with the situation. So my question is, why would I have that dream unless I were an abductee? Because it's not a dream telling me about my fear of death. That's what the shooting dream is, right? I'm not being chased by a bear. And the fear is a different quality, of course. The fear, as we all know by now, is the fear of annihilation. So I'm just wondering why it is that I would, or anyone would have a dream like that, unless it reflected something that you really do have to deal with in real life. Just throwing that out there.
Well, I thought about that a lot today, and I have a question, possibly a psychological one, for you.
Go on.
When I was a kid, I don't know, I would say 6, 7, 8. I had recurring dreams of vampires.
Yes.
Horrible fucking dreams of vampires. What purpose did that serve?
Well, I don't know about you, but my dream was always, for some reason, my mom's mother, my grandmother on my mom's side, would, like, carry me away. Like, she was somehow protecting me and maybe my sister, but definitely remember me, from these vampires. And that was always somehow carrying me away. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, what? I don't know what that
but again,
would be.
Even in the vampire dream, the difference is the fear. The fear is nightmare fear. It's night terror fear that everyone knows who's ever had a nightmare. They all have that same quality of shocking fright that is completely different from an abduction. Shocking fright.
Yeah.
And the abduction dream has the abduction quality of shocking fright. Not to the extent, but it's got the overtones of it, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I thought a lot about, and I'm not talking about, my vampire dreams were not Bela Lugosi or Edward. You know, my vampire dreams were, Nosferatu or Mr. Barlow from Salem's Lot, that kind of vampire. That horrifyingly, and I see the old Salem's Lot with David Soul, and I can't watch it because when that thing comes through that kitchen window and those people are sitting around that table and it falls to the floor and all of a sudden it just stands up. Oh, I mean, that's the kind of dreams I used to have as a kid. A lot. I mean, a lot. And I thought about that, and I think I told you on the phone that I had talked to a fair number of psychologists about those kind of dreams because I had a lot of people in the experiencer group, myself, a couple of people I knew from within ufology who had abduction experiences actually had dreams that they could clearly define as dreams of UFOs, of seeing UFOs, of aliens, that sort of thing. And I would say the vast majority, like if I asked 5 psychologists, is this an unusual dream? 3 or 4 of them said, yeah, it is a fairly atypical, unusual dream to have. I don't remember why it was unusual. I'd have to check into that again. But I've had dreams not unsimilar to what you described there. And in fact, I had an actual case where you described the people on the bus freezing as if their time stopped and the bus, you know, everybody on the bus stopped moving and stopped talking and it went silent and everyone was frozen in this speck of time. I had an actual case at a diner and a waitress who experienced that very same thing. She was
I think you told us
serving
about
a
that
table
during the Barbara Fleet Crow episode.
Yeah. Anytime I hear a dream like what you describe, I have to wonder if it's not partial memory of something. You know, I do. I've got to wonder if there's not something surfacing in there. But who knows? I mean, you can't qualify any of that stuff. But I agree with you.
I always find interesting about my own alien dreams, and then I was shocked to find out that you have the same thing, is that for all the talk about how pop culture is supposed to have influenced us and we should be seeing little grays and all that, I never see what they look like in the dreams.
Right. Yeah.
Why aren't I? Why aren't I? The only time I can remember having a dream where a UFO landed, I think I had it twice, because once was in a Vermont setting and the other was in Taunton, Massachusetts setting. It lands, people get out, and they're people. They're humans. So,
okay.
And, you know, so what is that? You know what I mean? Like, not even, again, I'm still not seeing little gray, whatever. And they're not like alien people or, you know, Nordic types or any of that.
Right.
But even that is like, they're dream characters. Like, even in those two scenarios that I just outlaid, they're the evil dream characters that I've talked about, where it's like you wake up into a dream and you start talking to them, and then they become aware that you're aware, and they want to kill you, like Inception.
Right. Right.
They were that quality of like malevolent human-looking people. So I don't know what that is. I don't know. I mean, how odd is that you would not see aliens?
I don't know. I mean, like I told you, that most of the time, what I see is the device, the craft, the whatever you want to call it. That's what I see the most of in dreams. I bet you I've had a handful of dreams where I actually saw an actual being of some sort. The one that sticks out in my head the most is my grandmother's house, which was, I don't know, less than a quarter mile from where Lisa and I had the pinnacle experience in the truck. My grandmother's house was literally right there on the previous corner from that. And I'm in her house. I go down the basement. It's raining. There's thunder going on outside. And as I go down the steps into the cellar area, there was a cellar and there was like a finished basement area. In the cellar area, right above the washing machine, which was one of those old tub washing machines with the rollers on the top, was a little window that looked outside. And there were two heads in that window, and they were clearly not human. And then I wake up screaming from that. I can say that's honestly like the only time that really sticks out in my head of that. Oddly enough, I don't have dreams or nightmares about the experiences that I have had. Now, that would make sense to me. Mm-hmm. If something like that is replaying in your head, that would make sense to me, and that you're trying to resolve it somehow, or it was just such a terrifying experience that it works its way into the subconscious and expedites itself that way. I don't have that. So I don't know. That is a little strange, but what isn't?
This is true.
But
it's also, isn't it also strange that, everyone talks about Whitley Strieber's communion head being a big influence on them. I mean, how many times have we heard this? And Lee brought it up again. And the two odd things about that to me are, one, I believe Strieber altered the appearance of what he actually saw. So that cover doesn't even really reflect what he saw.
Right.
And then two, I don't know of anyone everyone I know who says, oh, I've seen that, I've seen grays, doesn't really reflect that head. That head is tan. That head is not, that alien cover is not a gray.
Right.
It's got the same sort of shape. And then what people remember and draw are basically more like what I saw, which are sort of gray to the bluish end of the spectrum. Or, something along those lines. But the point is not exactly the Strieber thing. So what is it about the Strieber symbol, talking about what are symbols doing? What is it about that? I mean, that's fucking magic, isn't it? It wakes people up to this thing that's in their lives, but the thing that is in their lives doesn't exactly look like that, but they say it does. Like, the first thing people say is, I've seen that face. And then you realize, wait a minute, if you think about it, no, you haven't. And in fact, neither did he.
Well, I think that there is something in that image.
It does capture the quality of the beings.
That's it. I mean, that's the point. Lee and I have said for years that there will never be a drawing or anything that accurately reflects that look.
That is like the Mona Lisa of aliens. It's all in the smirk.
That's exactly it. I mean, you look at that face and you look at that slight smile on it, and you just get, you sardonic motherfuckers, because they are, in the humor sense of it. But yet, there's something about the eyes in that. There's something about there's a strange. I look at that picture. Whenever I look at that picture, I can almost smell them. And I know that's our running joke, let me smell you from the movie, but it evokes that kind of response, even though it's not perfect. It's got a certain quality about it that definitely captures the the essence of that look. I don't know. I mean, I've got a very kind guy who's doing a sculpture for me of my little guy from 9 years old with the hat who clapped in my face and the gong went off. And to me, I look at it and it just makes the pit of my stomach drop. It's so good, even in its rough state, or or semi-finished state. But I bet you a lot of people would look at that and go, no, that's not quite right. This is a little different, and that's a little different. But here's the thing. When you're talking about what Lee and I have said for years about this stuff, which is it's tailor-made, the experience is tailor-made, the subjective nature of many of these events, isn't that all part of it? Isn't that all they may not appear to everyone in the same fashion, so we may never get a cohesive drawing of whatever these things look like as a consensus reality. We may never get to that. So therefore, any image that we see is going to be somehow differential to what we actually experience. I don't know. I mean...
True, but then I don't know. Here's what's another layer of weird is I don't know many people who say they looked at the cover of Missing Time or Intruders. I know there are a few out there, but I don't know of many who have said that was what changed them. People always reference Communion as what changed them, but then when you think about what they then go on to believe their abductions are, they believe more along the malevolent, little alien space doctors line. So it's like Strieber wakes them up and Hopkins puts them to sleep or something. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah. Well, that's because Strieber's book doesn't contain any great answers. It asks questions, that's the thing. And so in the desire for answers, people will latch on to what makes cohesive sense to them.
Well, maybe
I
that's
can tell
true,
you,
because Communion, I guess if you're reading it, you could be like, well, this is one man's struggle to make sense of this, and then you read Bud Hopkins like, oh, this is one man who has made sense of this, and he's got a lot of correlative data, so he claims. And yet, through the sands of time, that turns out to be complete malarkey, and Strieber is still, as should be, questioning this stuff,
Yeah. Well, and I don't know of a lot of people who read Communion and look at that and go, that's a great UFO book. I mean, I don't even see that as a UFO book, per se.
No,
that's
getting
just
back to vampires, I've always said that's a modern-day version of Dracula.
Yeah. It's not about the phenomena of UFOs and aliens. It's about something a lot deeper. He really stuck his finger in the well and got into something. He touched upon that deep layer of the multi-level experience.
Like Dracula, I think, like part of it at least, is this real? I know Dracula is supposed to be a work of fiction, but there's something about it that feels so real that the myth of it has lived through the sands of time. Like that, to me, is what Dracula has done. I mean, obviously, here it is.
Yeah, look at today. Yeah.
And Strieber did the same damn, somehow he nailed it with aliens. But of course it goes deeper than that because it's also part philosophy. It's part spiritual journey. It's part materialist. What's going on with this world? What is reality? All those sort of deep questions too.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why this isn't considered like one of the great American works of literature. I mean, really, because even if you don't believe, even if you're a complete skeptic, it doesn't matter. Look what he did with this book. Look how it affected people's lives. That even today they still say, like even if it is a work of fiction, like even if you're a skeptic and you say, well, this is all crap. Yeah. Well, how telling is it that this work of fiction can
touched upon something,
wake people up to something they believe is in their lives?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how does that work? Unless you're a Bible.
Yeah.
So I wonder what those symbols do. Now I'm going to tie this in. What are symbols? What did those symbols do to Lee? What are symbols? What is it about a shape or a set of shapes that speaks to the unconscious mind?
Did my symbol speak to you? You've seen it. I mean, no, damn few people have, but you've seen it. Did it speak to you in any profound way? I mean,
not really, because there was almost something logical about it, So it spoke to me in a way of like, almost like a horrible time. Like you could figure this out if you really tried, which you probably can't.
Right. Yeah.
But there are some
I'm
things,
still trying to figure it out. So
if you just think about like a math symbol, or basic math geometry, that does nothing for you, right? But then you look at geometric shapes in a crop circle, for instance, or sacred geometry, or fractal geometry, or any of those sorts of things that have. I mean, why does one carry the flavor of a higher meaning than another? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
This to me is another clue of like what is a human being, that just seeing a line put together a certain way evokes a completely different feeling and set of imagery in your head about reality than another, and one can put you to sleep and bore you.
Yeah.
And the other wakes you up. I mean, how does that work? Why does that work?
One feels a little too much like education.
Yes.
I mean, you know, and God knows who needs that after we get out of high school and college.
Well, one feels like an answer and one feels like a question, and the one that feels like a question feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if that's true for everyone. I wonder if people who are mathematicians or, you know, logical people or whatever find solace in answers and would be more attracted to structured symbols that we know the meanings of.
Well, I remember something that Lee told me a long time ago when I described for him my earliest experiences of seeing that spinning white square at the beginning of an experience, which I saw a lot of. And, you know, I talked to a lot of people about that, and Lee and I used to have hours-long discussions at the condo about that very issue, about what is it about a spinning perfect square? What is that? What does that mean? What is it doing? This might work somehow into the symbology thing, in the sense that our brain, I know, works in geometric shapes. It works within the confines of geometric shapes. So if you're talking about symbols and they're geometric shapes by design, is it possible that that's some kind of reprogramming? Did Lee get a download of some kind of information that subconsciously answered his fears or waylaid his interest in this? Is it speaking more directly in a language that the brain can understand better than language, I guess is the point. You know, I wonder about that. Because I've heard from several people that our brains respond and react and configure better in geometric shapes. So I don't know.
Maybe we can get a symbologist on the show. Maybe that's a new direction to look.
Well, I think we were supposed to, you know, we're going to have Colin Andrews back on here soon if we can get him, if we can get his schedule, worked out to where he wants to come on and talk about the symbology of crop formations and all that sort of thing. And Colin has seen my symbol, and I think we talked on one of the shows after him about that he was sketching something not too dissimilar from my symbol while we were talking. I mean, all of that's this.
Your symbol does look like a crop formation.
Oh, really?
Don't you think? I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it could
won't
easily
it be
the Led Zeppelin cover.
Won't it be shocking if it shows up in the field this harvest? Then we'll all have a good laugh. No, I mean, I don't know if it looks as much like that to me as it does what I would think a sigil would end up looking like. I think it's much more sigilistic. Crop circle formations, I don't know. I see it more sigil-like, and
Lee has seen your symbol, right?
He has, yeah. He saw it actually when it was fresh.
Did he mention that it looked like the type of thing that he saw in those symbols?
No, I mean, and in fact, I'm pretty sure that my symbol came before he ever went to do that. If I could ever remember the chronological order of things, it'd be amazing. But I think that happened. Well, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think Lee had already exited the field per se before that happened, because that was when I was going to give the talk in D.C. That was right before that, and Lee wasn't around for that. So, but he did see it. I do remember him seeing it, but I don't remember him ever commenting that looked familiar or anything like that. No, I actually, as anybody who listens to the show frequently enough will know, I contacted Mario Pazziglini, who did the Cryptic Writings book that everybody's like dying to get their hands on. He had given me a copy of his book when I met him, and I called him, and he's the one who kind of gave me his take on it. But I've not heard anything so far that's really kind of figured it out for me. It's still kind of a mystery thing to me. I still don't quite know what it means. It's hard to talk about it without actually showing people, and I don't want to do that yet. But there's a reflective quality about it. When you say there's a reflective quality in it,
what do you mean reflective?
There's a part of a symbol that's reversed in it. There's a symbol portrayed one way, and then a symbol portrayed another way, and it's a reversal. And so I don't know. I look at that portion of it and I go, okay, this is kind of where they are, and this is where I am, and it does this. It's like we're on the other side of the mirror. We're the flip side. We're the negative. You're the positive, or we're the positive and you're the negative. That sort of, polar opposites. It's got that kind of quality to it. But then there are other elements that don't seem to speak to the rest of it to me. And so I think, well, that can't be right because that doesn't incorporate all of the pieces to it. So I don't know. That's why I keep it close to the cuff. I don't release it out into the net or into public. I did show it at that conference, but surprisingly enough, very few people actually came up and looked at it right on the mirror. I took the mirror with me to the conference, covered it in cellophane, which was to be a mistake later on in years when I took it out of storage, and it was covered in mold, which ultimately destroyed the image. I couldn't get the mold off without taking the image off the mirror.
So a mirror image on a mirror. Isn't that fun?
Well, and Lee brought that up. He said, I think the fact that it's on a mirror is symbolic in and of itself. Despite whatever the symbol may say, it's on a mirror. That's interesting. That's an interesting point all by itself.
Very good. Well, we are running super late with this show, so we should probably call it wraps now.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, I would like to say thank you to Lee for coming on the show, and look forward to having him back many times for like a guest host spot. I'm really happy that he was able to come on because actually we got a lot more to go over. There was a whole lot of stuff we didn't even get to talk about that we experienced together that I think will be a future episode. But so thank you, Lee. Again,
yeah, thank you.
Many thanks, and look forward to having you back. As far as the new direction of this show, I don't know. Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's go into it right now.